just take us through some of the highlights, how it all started for you. You grew up in Bow. You went to Colchester, that was your first team, if that's right?
Yeah, I was a Bow boy. I was born in at Bart's Hospital, so I was a proper Cockney if you're born in Santa Bow Bells, and then moved out to the country to Suffolk, Great Cornard. Played as a kid there for a team called Cornard Dynamos. In my era, you didn't have academies. There was no academies. You were scouted by pro clubs, or you wrote off for trials. So I got into the school team, then into the district team, then county side. And then my dad's mate, Mick Brown, wrote off to loads of different clubs, and Wolverhampton Wanderers. I got a reply from them, which was about 4.5 hours away from where I lived. So my dad took me up there, had a trial. Their manager at the time, John Barnwell, quite liked me. I was only 14, and he had Arsenal links where he played in the same team as my dad's uncle Vic in the 50s, so we had a bit of an Arsenal connection. So I was there as a schoolboy, 14 to 16. And then at 16, you get your letter. The club send your letter out whether they're going to take you on as an apprentice from 16 to 18. And that's all I ever wanted to do was play football. And I got the letter. It was on the headed Wolverhampton Wanderers notepaper, and it just said, "Dear Perry, due to financial constraints, we are not going to offer you an apprenticeship." And that was my world gone, devastated. I just thought, that's it. I'm never going to be a footballer now. Probably the only time I've ever had a few tears. I hate footballers who cry to be football. It just does my head in because they're crying for themselves. But I had a few tears, and my dad, being the old East End sort of hard-nosed bloke that he was, he just said, "Look," he said, "if stop crying." Give me a bit of a slap, to be fair, and said, "Stop crying. You're acting like a baby. Do you want to be a footballer? How badly do you want to be a footballer?" And I said, "Dad, that's what I want to do." He said, "Well, there's another 91 clubs out there." He said, "If it takes it, and you've got the desire and determination, I'll take you to every one of those clubs, because football's just about an opinion. Because one bloke has said you're not good enough, doesn't mean to say that all the others are going to feel the same." Went for loads of different trials, all around East Anglia, Ipswich, Norwich, Colchester, Luton, Southend, Peterborough. Peterborough would offer me an apprenticeship, but I played in a trial game for them, and played next to a lad. I was only 16, and the fella next to me was 25, and he was very clever. He didn't pass me the ball, because he knew I was trying to take his job. Peter Morris called me in his office, the Peterborough manager, and said, "We decided we're not going to offer you an apprenticeship." And my dad jumped from our side of the desk over to his side and grabbed him by the throat and smashed him up against the wall. And I just thought, well, that's not me signing for Peterborough then, that's my career over there. Culture offered me an apprenticeship at 16, and that was me fulfilling my dream, playing football full time, but you're on the bottom rung of the ladder then. So I got in Culture's first team before my 17th birthday, then got dropped after about 13, 14 games, didn't play for a year, then thought about doing something else, looked for another job, but lucky enough I had a year contract left, and then the manager there, Cyril Lee, decided to put me out on the right wing, which I'd never played there in my life before because I was very quick, had to learn new aspects of the game, and then lucky enough I got myself back in the first team. Scored a few goals. Another lad up front called Tony Aycock, another gingerhead player. He was getting all the headlines because he was scoring 25, 30 goals a season. And all the scouts used to come watch Culture on a Friday night, because we played our home games on Friday night. So there was always loads of scouts in the director's box. And a lot of them come to watch him because of the goals he was scoring. And lucky enough, I started to play well at the same time. And then Arsenal bought me for £75,000 in 1986.
So that moment when, as an Arsenal fan, you get bought by the club that you support, how did that feel?
I didn't believe it, to be fair. At the time I had a financial advisor, which is a bit weird because I used to pay him money to give me financial advice of money that I didn't have, so that was quite strange really. But he phoned me up and said, I thought I was going to Crystal Palace, and there, mate, because tapping up goes all over the place. You always get a phone call before you go into the club. You shouldn't do it, but clubs do. And the assistant manager at Crystal Palace at the time was Alan Evans, and Steve Coppell was the manager there. Alan Evans phoned me up and said, "Perry, it's Crystal Palace here. We like the look of you. We're going to put a bid in, £50,000. We want to buy you." He said, "We've seen another young player from non-league that we can play you and him up front. You've both got a lot of pace. You're both very raw. We'll sort of smooth the edges off." And that player was called Ian Wright. And I don't know what happened to him, so he must have one that sort of slipped through the net. So then my financial advisor phoned me up and said, "Arsenal have come in for you." And I just told him in a nice way to get lost, basically, because I thought me being a massive Gooner, my family Gooners, my dad's uncle Vic, as I said earlier, played for Arsenal in the 50s, so we're entrenched in sort of Arsenal tradition. And I remember meeting John Hazel, my advisor at the time at Culture train station, getting on the train. So I said, look, John, I know we're going to Crystal Palace. I said, I've already been, tapped up. He went, no, we're going to Arsenal, going to the Marble Halls at Arsenal. I said, no, it ain't. He said, don't wind me up. You're being pretty cruel. So we got to Liverpool Street, got on the Piccadilly line to Holborn, the Church line to Holborn, Piccadilly line, and then I said to him, look, you're going too far now. This is like beyond the realms. I said, this is real, like sort of cruelty. We got to Arsenal Tube Station, turned left, made our way up, then right into Avenel Road, and I still didn't believe him. I just thought we were going to meet in somebody, at Arsenal, because it was a bit clandestine in those days. So no one, you wouldn't go and meet someone at Crystal Palace. And we got to the famous marble halls and the steps that go in the entrance there, and Arsenal always had a commissionaire on the door in all this regalia and uniform and hat. And as we got there, Nobby, the commissionaire, said to John Hazel, good morning, Mr. Hazel, nice to see you again. And then he looked at me and he went, good morning, Mr. Groves, welcome to Highbury. And that's the first time that I actually thought, do you know what, this is true, because he wouldn't have known my name otherwise. So, bit of a blur after that, went in. Ken Fry came down the famous marble stairs, said, Mr. Graham will see you up in his office. Went up into his massive oak door. It was like going to see the Wizards of Oz. It was like you just open the door, and George Graham, the manager at the time, Simon, was sat in a massive, this throne. It was huge, and he put me on this little milking stool. So he had obviously the advantage, psychologically and physically. I can remember him saying that he'd seen me play as a youth player. He was manager of QPR youth team. We got beat 7-0, but he saw my enthusiasm then. He'd remembered me from when I was 16. Then when he went to Millwall, they tried to buy me. And he said, you're very raw. He said, we love your desire, we love your attitude and your determination, and you've got a big heart. That's the way we want to go with our players. We can nurture you, we can smooth the edges off. You won't be in the first team for 18 months. And then the negotiating period started. And he said, we'll give you a 3-year contract, £350 a week. Bearing in mind I was on £150 a week at Culture United. He said, we'll give you £150 appearance money and £5,000 sign-on fee. And I just looked at him, and my dad had said, when I went there, whatever you do, play hardball, don't take the first offer. Just be very polite, and you can always squeeze some more money out of them. So in my head, that was I was going to say, thank you very much, Mr. Graham, for your offer, but I think I'm worth a little bit more than that. But out of my mouth came, thank you very much, where will I sign? So I just signed straight away. Because there was no negotiating. There's no way a player from Colchester can turn down the chance of going to a world famous club like Arsenal. So, and I had a 3-year contract as well, which was the longest contract I'd ever signed.
Just interested in just taking it, fantastic. But when your dad was very, very involved with you all the way along.
Yes.
It came to that meeting, he wasn't there.
No, because at the time I was 21. So he thought, and quite rightly, that he'd done all he could do. When I was a kid, he was my biggest influence. He was the best coach that I'd ever heard. I think he said, from when I was 6, when I started playing, to when I was 16, I think he gave me 3 well dones in those 10 years, because he wanted me not to rest on my laurels. Took me everywhere. He was a long distance lorry driver, so he used to make sure that his loads were sorted out so he could take me to football Saturday and Sundays. But obviously playing at Culture United, he watched every single game. He'd miss about 3 games in that period of time. But then he just said, you're a man now, it's up to you. You go and, with John Hazel, who was a very big influence on me as well, you've got to go and sort yourself out. I've done my job, now, you're on the road.
Yes, I'm really interested because I've been listening to a few of the guys speaking today, and the impact of the father was huge on a lot of them. And from your point of view as well, if you look back and you think,
Oh, massive. Without my dad, then I couldn't have done it. Because even through that, and football's all about opinions, and even as a younger player, you go through peaks and troughs of your performance levels. And even through the bad times when I got released by Wolverhampton Wanderers, he had the belief in me. He said, I know you're good enough, but it's not worth me thinking you're good enough if you don't. It's not worth me having the desire and the belief in your ability. If I'm only 99%, then we'll call it quits. What his philosophy was, and I put it onto my 2 children as well, Lewis and Drew, is anything you try and do, you give it 100%. You give it everything you've got. If you don't quite reach the goals that you'd like to get to, then you can look yourself in the mirror and you can say, I gave everything. There's no, we had this mantra as well, it wasn't, we never had the word failure. It was not succeeding the first time. And there's a massive difference, because everybody in life, you'll come to different obstacles, and you have different problems to overcome. No one succeeds every single time. It is impossible. If you look at the great sportsmen, a great example is David Beckham, probably the world's most famous footballer, if not sportsman on the planet. He come to periods in his career, I think when he was 12 or 13, they said he was too small. Then you had the World Cup situation where he got sent off in 1998, and he was vilified by obviously the country. There was effigies of him hanging in the streets. He proved people wrong. He's proved managers and coaches wrong throughout his career. So he's a great example of that sort of that mantra, and that's what my father and myself had.
And also, if you're scared to fail in life, you'll never succeed.
Exactly. I mean, you shouldn't be afraid to fail, because you set yourself goals, and I think you should always try and push yourself beyond your limits. And a lot of it's quite strange actually. A lot of fans come up to me, or even players who played with me, and they'd seen my career sort of progress, and said, "God, you're not being funny." Perry said, "Cool, you overachieved, didn't you?" And they're trying to do it as a put down, that overachieving, how lucky was you. And I always say, thank you very much. That's the biggest compliment you could ever pay anybody, that you've overachieved, that you've got more out of yourself than your ability was there. You have to have some ability to play at top level football. There's no bad players who play top level football, but it's what you drag out of that ability. And I'd like to think that I dragged everything possible out of what I was lucky enough to have.
And also, what's fascinating with you, if I can say, is that you are a legend from the point of view, you've got a cult status from the point of view of Arsenal fans. Where does that come from?
I think legend doesn't sit easy with me, because I think legends are people who are at the top level of the game. Fantastic players, probably international players, and players who've probably the best in Europe or best in the world, or have played for the club for 700 or 800 games. The cult thing, which I think is probably more appropriate, I think fans now can identify with me as being one of them, and being a fan who was lucky enough to play for the football club that they supported. At the time, when I was at Arsenal, they loved me and hated me. I wouldn't say that, for the 6 and a half, 7 seasons that I was there, that they loved me all the time, because sometimes my performance level was dropped. They were very quick to let me know. I think I'm the only player ever to be booed when his name was read out on the tannoy before the game started. But then you have to overcome that. And the way that I overcame that, and I say to other players, is you have to work as hard as you possibly can. And if fans see you giving 100%, then they'll come back round. And even if you make mistakes, they'll be with you. If they know that you're prepared to sweat, for your shirt. And I think now that I've finished my career, I think fans now look back and they go, actually, sometimes Perry could give Stuart Pearce to run around, the best fullback at the time. Other times his nan could have marked him out of the game. There was, there's sort of peaks and troughs. But the one thing they could never throw at me is that I didn't give 100% in every single game that I played, because I had to. That was my job and my role in the team. And also video clips and YouTube clips, they don't show your misses. They show the goals that you scored and the ones that you've made. So you become a better player when you've packed it in, because then fans look back and go, actually, he weren't that bad, really. So you can get a bit of a rose-tinted look at it. But I think now they just see me as one of them. They just see me as a mad Arsenal fan who was lucky enough to play and win trophies for his team.
And talking about being an Arsenal fan, last Sunday must have been a good day for you.
Sunday was good because I was drunk all day. Saturday was even better when we won. It's very strange, because I was lucky enough to be there with my 2 boys, Lewis and Drew. Like, Lewis is 24, Drew's 22, massive gooners, and it's a different feeling when you see your team win as a fan. I was lucky enough to be on the pitch at Anfield in '89 when we won our first title, for 18 years. Won a League Cup with Arsenal as well, won a title in '91. But when you're a player, you're immersed and focused in what you're doing. You don't realise the enormity of what's going on around you. When you've packed in your career and you look back to Anfield '89, then you realise how big that was, not just for Arsenal Football Club, but for football in general. But when you're a fan, you go through the roller coaster of emotions of watching your team go 2-0 down against the underdogs, thinking this is going to be like a long 82 minutes, watching Cazorla score a fantastic goal to get us back into it, and then you see your team on the pitch galvanise themselves, and Aaron Ramsey and Cazorla and Koscielny pull that team together, and then the belief come back, then get to 2-2, and then obviously Aaron Ramsey scoring a fantastic goal in extra time. And for me as a fan, I had as much enjoyment and exhilaration out of when I was playing for Arsenal on the pitch. It's a different sort of feeling, and I know what it means to Arsenal supporters. You know, all the pundits and all the nooks say, "No, you haven't won a trophy for 9 years," so that obviously keeps them quiet. But as a club and a team, they needed to win a trophy. They needed to win a major trophy to give you the belief that you can win even more trophies. And there was a similarity between the team that I was in 1987, playing Liverpool in the Little Woods Cup final. At that time, Arsenal hadn't won a trophy for 8 seasons, so there's a correlation there. And I know what it means to a group of players and young players to win that first trophy. And it was one of the best. It was one of the best, without exaggerating, one of the best days of my football life was on Saturday when we beat Hull 3-2. It was just like amazing.
And it's going to set us in good stead now that they've won. It makes a massive difference.
Huge, yeah, because younger players like Jack Wilshere and even Cazorla and Aaron Ramsey, Theo Walcott when he comes back in, Oxlade-Chamberlain, they'll go into big games. I know that Hull aren't a big team, but trust me, when you're 2-0 down in an FA Cup final after 8 minutes, that is a huge, huge problem you've got to solve. And they'll have a belief now of going into other massive games that they know that they can win them and get a result. Whereas before, they were going into big games hoping that you can win. So psychologically, it's a massive difference not only for you, but against your opponents. What they need to now is obviously beat a bigger club in one of the big games, and then their belief will again go tenfold. So it's huge for those younger players.
Also, just something not really connected, but I went on Sunday to the parade
Yeah.
with my son, and I realised that for him, he's 10. It's the next generation of supporters understanding what winning means. He'd never seen it before.
Exactly what it is. There's a generation there, as you said, younger fans. I was at the Emirates on Saturday morning doing some work for the media, and there was 25,000 fans going to watch the game at the Emirates on Saturday on a big screen. So it just shows you what a massive club Arsenal is. And there was a father and his son have come from Newcastle, not to go to the FA Cup final, but to take his son to the Emirates to watch his team with 25,000 other Arsenal fans. Again, it was his first FA Cup final, a 9-year-old lad, and they'd forgot their tickets, but Arsenal sorted them out, and you could see the joy in this little boy's face with his Arsenal kit on, and that will give him. And football's all about memories. It's all about your memories growing up as a child. I remember the FA Cup finals, in 78 against Ipswich, 79 against Manchester United. So, and 80, I was a ball boy in 1980, Arsenal West Ham, and I want to get this generation now back to how big the FA Cup is. I want them to feel what I felt when I was a kid. It was the most important game of the season, and I think that FA Cup on Saturday went back to the old FA Cups of the 70s and 80s, the underdogs, going in front, Arsenal battling back, brilliant occasion, watched by millions and millions around the world. So I and my two boys got a little bit complacent because in the early 2000s, Arsenal were in 4 FA Cup finals in 5 years. And there was one time where it was at the Millennium Stadium against Manchester United, the last one in 2005, where I had a chance of tickets, and I actually said, I might not go because we'll go next year, lads, like to my two boys. And then I had to pull myself back and say, hold on a minute, you might not be in an FA Cup for next year. And as it happens, it was 9 years before we got back. So we'd been to 4 in 5 seasons, and Arsenal winning lots of trophies at the time. And even my boys of their generation, they knew no bad times for Arsenal. They didn't have a season where Arsenal weren't winning trophies. So they're a generation who I say they're now 24 and 25. When they were younger, Arsenal was dominating everybody. So they've gone through what I call a real football fan's emotion of seeing their team not winning anything. So then I think they even appreciated this FA Cup final win more than the ones that, when they were younger, when they were sort of 9 and 10. So it was just like a huge, huge occasion.
And looking forward now, for a final question before we move on to the final piece. Looking forward now to the World Cup. What do you think of the squad that he's been?
I'm delighted that Roy Hodgson has been sensible enough to pick the younger players, because I think Brendan Rodgers and Pochettino and Martinez have virtually picked his squad for him, because the younger players who have performed this year have proved that we've got young English talent that are technically good enough to play at the highest level. If you look at Lallana and Luke Shaw, and then you've got Ross Barkley, and then the Liverpool like Raheem Sterling, Jordan Henderson, and Flanagan obviously is on standby. You know, there's a plethora of talent, and I think he's been very clever as well, because if he's brave enough to play these younger players, play some experienced players around him. Wayne Rooney's obviously got great experience, and Steven Gerrard, and the two centre Jagielka and Cahill and Glenn Johnson. But play 4 or 5 of the younger players, give them the freedom to go and express themselves within a team framework. Because in Brazil, you're going to need players that are very good explosively over short distances, because you're going to have to turn defence to attack within probably 10-15 seconds. But it's got to be explosive, short spurts. And you've got the players that I mentioned there, you know, with Oxlade-Chamberlain as well, and Lallana and Raheem Sterling and Ross Barkley, very explosive. Now, if he's brave enough to play him and go and pick, I think that it would be a really exciting World Cup. If it works, Roy Hodgson's seen as like a genius. If it doesn't, then Roy Hodgson can just say, look, you asked me to put these younger players in, that's what I've done. It's experience for the next Euros that are coming up. So he's in a no-lose situation. So I just hope he's got the reputation of being a bit of a cautious coach, you know, holding on to what you've got and being difficult to get beat. If you look at Southampton, Everton, Liverpool, the teams and the managers, their philosophy is, we're going to go out and try and win games. And they give the younger players the licence to go and express themselves. So I really hope, as an England fan, which I am as well, I think it's a real exciting time. You know, if he plays 4 or 5 of them in the team and lets them go and express themselves, it could be a really exciting World Cup.
How far do you think we can go?
With the younger players, obviously, the further you get in tournaments, there's really thin margins. It's divided on a penalty decision or a referee decision or even penalties. So I would think that if we got to quarterfinals, which I'd expect us, you know, to progress that far, if the younger players perform to the levels that I know they're capable of, when you get to quarterfinals, anything is possible. But I think if we did get to quarterfinals with this, you know, this young team, then I could think you say you've had a decent World Cup.